My name is Don Dickson. I want to welcome you to another edition of our structure fishing workshop. We're in the midst of a study on lake types, which includes not only the natural lakes, but all of the different types of reservoirs. Our reservoir discussion started the last time we got together with highland reservoirs. And today we're going to be switching to lowland reservoirs. When we started the study, I told you there are three main categories of reservoirs: lowlands, flatlands, and highlands. But there are distinctive variances within each and every one of those categories, which we need to distinguish. Like I pointed out the last time we talked, a highland 1 is a little different than a highland 2, and our keys are a little bit different. And then we talked about highland 3, which is a canyon type lake, which creates even more problems. So each and every time we break these reservoirs down, I want you to understand that the end result, what I'm looking for, is to be able to give you a key how to fish each and every one of those reservoirs. Once it's identified, you know exactly what your key is and how to go about fishing it. Now today we're going to talk about lowland reservoirs, and just like in the other categories of reservoirs, lowland has some different types of lowlands within that category. We actually have three main types of lowland reservoirs. And I'm going to begin that discussion today with a lowland number 1. And I'm going to show you a diagram right here. This is a lowland number 1 reservoir, and this is the perfect reservoir. It was my favorite. It was Buck Perry's favorite, and all with good reason, and I'm going to explain why that is. Now, most of these reservoirs are quite old. They were built years and years and years ago. And back in those days, when there wasn't quite the population boom that there has been since those days, property values weren't near what they are today, most of these lowland 1 reservoirs were built in beautiful country that was so suitable for a great reservoir. That's why we love them so much. But today, with all the population boom and the skyrocketing costs of land, today people are building reservoirs in all kind of places, which years ago would not have been suitable for building a reservoir. So when you find one of these old lowland 1 reservoirs, I'm telling you, you need to get close to it and go fishing. And here are some of the reasons why. If you remember back when we were studying structure last year, we talked about there being 17 different types of structure. And structure, of course, is our key to finding fish. Well, in a lowland 1 reservoir, you have nearly every type of structure that we talked about can, in most cases, does exist in a lowland 1 reservoir. You have riprap along the dam, you have riprap along causeways and bridges that maybe cross over the lake. You have underwater road beds in many lowlands. You can have underwater railroad grades. You have bars and humps and islands. You have break lines to side feeder stream cuts. You have break lines to the main channel. Just about everything that you can name exists in a lowland type reservoir. Another great thing about this lowland 1 type reservoir is when they were built years and years ago, they were all clear cut. In other words, all the trees were cut out. In addition, these lowland number 1 reservoirs would be drawn down every year. And over a long period of time, all the brush and the roots and all of the stuff, all of the hangs, that you're accustomed to getting in some reservoirs, they're all gone. Over the years, they've been totally eliminated. Plus, it was all clear cut to begin with when they formed the reservoir. So what you have is clean, workable structure. And you have every type of structure that man ever came across available to you in a lowland number 1. And one of the most important requirements, as you know from listening to me, of any fishing hole that I go to is watercolor. Now in a lowland 1, you're most likely to have the same watercolor throughout the lake. In fact, all the structure and all of the things that we're concerned about seem to be uniform in a Lowland 1 from the dam to the headwaters. It's all available throughout the entire lake. Everything seems to be sort of uniform, seems to be just the same up here as it is down there. And wow, that's what we're looking for if you can find it. All of my first promotions way back in 1972, where I started, we were going into a town near a reservoir, near some lake, whatever it was. And we would go to the biggest tackle dealer. And nobody really knew about spoon plugs. Nobody really knew about Buck's material. I shouldn't say nobody. Most of the country, 95% of fishermen, never heard of Buck, never heard of deep water, never heard of spoon plugs and the importance of depth and speed control and all of that stuff. It wasn't, nobody knew about it. So what we did, we go in and meet with a tackle dealer, someone who owned a tackle shop in a big city, find the biggest one, and we'd tell our story. And we'd say, listen, we want to prove it to you. We want to take you fishing on your lake. And we're not familiar with your lake, but we're going to become familiar with it. We want you to go fishing with us. So we'd take these guys fishing. And we'd make a good catch. And next thing you know, he's ordering 5 or sometimes as much as $10,000 worth of spoon plugs and trolling rods and all the kind of stuff that Buck's Baits had to offer. And that's how we survived. That's how we did it. Hard way to do business, but it was successful. And all of my early promotions were done on those Lowland #1 reservoirs. And the reason is that it was so easy. Now, just about everything you're looking for in a way of a successful fishing situation, you can find it in a Lowland #1 reservoir. And one of the things I didn't mention, which is an attribute of a Lowland 1, is most all of the shoreline structures, the shoreline bars, they're a ridge lake because of the type of terrain that these reservoirs were flooded. Most of the shoreline bars are narrow and ridge lake and reach all the way to the channel. Most every shoreline related feature reaches the channel. Now, you know from our past studies how important that is. But most important for me when I was promoting, I go out there one day and get on these bars that reach all the way and establish casting positions. And then just go out and take one of these tackle dealers fishing. We'd be out in the middle of the lake somewhere anchoring down in about 8 feet of water, 9 feet of water, throwing into 35 or 40 feet, coming up over the end of the bar with a 200 or a 100 spoon plug, catching bass right away. Just bang, 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 because that already established. The fish were just loaded in these reservoirs and nobody was fishing it. But I didn't have to go out there and go to work and do a lot of trolling and maneuvering all over the lake to find a guy of fish. I established casting positions on these shoreline related features and could simply go out and anchor the boat, fan cast, and if they weren't there, we'd wait 10 minutes, and sure enough, it was like there were so many fish in these reservoirs that were literally dying of old age that there wasn't such a thing as going out and not catching fish. It was easy. But one of my keys was fishing one of these Lowland 1 reservoirs. Okay, that's a Lowland #1. Now, as we move from that, there's 2 more that we're going to talk about that appear to be the same, but they're not the same. But before I get there, I have to explain one thing first. In Buck's early, when we had the handwritten material, he designated 4 different various types of lowlands. Lowland 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, I wasn't aware of this till just recently, but in his latest edition of his advanced material, he has condensed that four different types of lowlands down to 3. And I'm going to explain why and how that happened, because I'm going to do the same. Now, the old Lowland #2 was a delta reservoir. And we talked, back when we were doing our study on structure, about the delta situations. We talked about how to fish it, what the keys were. So we've already been through all that. Now I'm going to throw a couple pictures up, give you what is known as a lowland, what used to be known as a lowland number 2. That's Kentucky Lake and Barkley Lake. They're side by side up there. Those are pure deltas. Now, because there's not a whole bunch of pure deltas that are being fished today, Buck sort of condensed it and sort of put it as an afterthought and just now identifies 3 different types of lowlands. But we still have to be cognizant of a delta. And if you go back and review that structure talk when we talked about deltas, you'll understand why. But we're going to skip over now, and we're just going to say the new, like it is in Buck's latest material. So we're really going to identify 3 different types of lowland reservoirs for you. And I know that was probably pretty confusing. As you look at that diagram, you'll see the dam area is rather narrow and runs up the reservoir for whatever it is, 1/3 of the reservoir or so. And that is a dead giveaway to you that that dam is sitting in a forested area. It's basically a highland characteristic in this dam area. We have deep, steep stuff coming right off the shore. And in most cases, you're going to have clear water. So it's a highland characteristic. But we also, as you go up the reservoir and you look as it widens out, it now takes on all of the lowland characteristics, which is what, of course, we're looking for, workable structure. You may even have a roadbed, may even have a causeway going across with riprap. And some of the structures are more rounded. You have feeder cuts coming in and creating shoreline-related features. So as you look at this lowland number 2, my key to fishing this is to go up into the upper end of the reservoir. Now your watercolor is going to be better up there as well. So everything that we're looking for in a lowland 2 happens in the upper end of the reservoir. Not that you can't catch a fish in the lower end, but why beat your head against a wall? Go up where the fishing is much more defined, better watercolor, more workable structure. Go towards the upper end of a lowland number 2. Okay, now I'm going to throw up another diagram, which is a lowland number 3. Now this one appears to be the same as the one I just showed you, but there's a major difference. Here in this particular lowland, the wide area is down in the area of the dam, and it doesn't narrow up until you get to the upper reaches. Now, when you look at the wider area down at the dam, most of these reservoirs, by the way, are quite large. Wouldn't be anything to have 300 or 400 miles of shoreline. So as you look at this diagram, that lower end of the reservoir, none of the shoreline related features are going to reach to the channel. It's just not going to reach. It's going to be a big area of flat. You can tell just looking at that diagram. You're going to have lots of flats till you get out there to the channel. So I don't really have what I want in this lower end. Now, you could say, well, there might be a delta condition or something. There might be, I can work some break lines to the channel down in the lower end, coming off the flats. But at the depths involved in this big lowland number 3, the depth breaking into the channel is going to be so deep, it'll probably be of no value to you whatsoever. Once again, even though this is a complete opposite of a number 2, our key to fishing it is the same. We're going to head towards the upper reaches. We're going to get away from that big flat area down near the dam and get up there where most of the shoreline features are more defined. We have side feeder stream cuts coming in, creating some shoreline bars, and we even maybe show an island or something up there, which means you have some underwater humps. But again, my most workable stuff is in the upper area. So let's recount what we just said. Lowland number 1, best reservoir ever was. If you can find one, go fish it. Lowland number 2, the dam area is built in a forested area, deep, steep, clear. Go towards the headwaters. Go up to where it's flatter and more flattened out. When I say flat, you know what I'm talking about. More gradual slope and structures that are workable, and better watercolor. And then a Lowland 3, even though it's the opposite of a number 2, the answer to fishing it is the same as a number 2. Go towards the headwaters. More workable stuff, more identifiable stuff. And that, my friends, is the Lowland group. And again, I'll just close by saying this. Lowland number 1 is the perfect reservoir. So, appreciate you being with me today. I want you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram if you would, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here if you haven't already done it. We got a lot more to talk about. So thanks for being with me, and I'll see you the next time.